All right. Yeah, I guess we can get started. Thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate you guys coming out. This is the first webinar that we've done like this. Hopefully the first of many. But let me share my screen. I didn't realize my screen share stopped when I started. All right. So, today we're going to be talking about overselling on your stores and how to stop doing that. This webinar series is it's going to be weekly. Each week we're going to trade off on the product that we're kind of talking about just to keep things simple. So this week is focused on Webgility Online, at least for the demo portion. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about inventory management and SKUs and why managing your inventory with SKUs is so important, kind of just the fundamentals behind SKU management and utilizing them properly. And then David is going to jump into Webgility Online and kind of demo the whole process and help us understand how to set things up properly, how your stores communicate with Webgility and Webgility communicates with QuickBooks to make sure that inventory is synced and managed properly. Again, this is the demo portion, at least, is going to be focused on Webgility Online. If you are a Webgility desktop customer, that is totally fine. You are more than welcome to hang out. Just know that anytime we're demoing the product itself, it's going to be in Webgility Online, at least for this week. Next week, we're going to be doing this same exact topic for Webgility Desktop. So again, if you're a Webgility Desktop customer, next week is your jam. Uh, so we're going to trade off every other week. So the following week after next week, we're going to talk about a different topic. So the goal here is to not sell you anything, not be marketing in any way, shape, or form. It is simply to give you guys the support and information you need on how to get the most out of Webgility, and maybe learn a couple things from each other along the way. I know David and I are really good with the product and we understand how Webgility works, but we don't own businesses, at least at this current juncture. So, knowing that you guys work day in, day out as business owners or work within a business, you guys might have some tips to share each other, and that's super valuable as well. So, I definitely encourage chatting in our webinar chat or asking questions. There will be a dedicated Q&A at the very end after the demo. I say very end, but it might take up half of the webinar. So that Q&A, we will be able to answer mostly general questions, workflow related stuff, just like asking for advice. We won't be able to answer stuff directly about your Webgility account. So if you have questions about like why something isn't working or technical related questions, that's totally fine. Feel free to ask them, but we won't be able to answer them on the webinar. We'll get with our team afterwards and make sure that we follow up with you. So all questions are valid, but not all of them will probably be able to be answered on this webinar.
And I see a,
Um,
a question there. It says, so if we're using desktop, we can join next
yes.
week for the same topic, and that's a yes.
Absolutely. Yep. So every week we're going to do this, at least for the foreseeable future, on Wednesdays at the same exact time, and it'll switch off Webgility Desktop, Webgility Online each week. All right, everybody's going to the beach. I'm really jealous. Enjoy your day, Stephen.
We don't have a beach in Arizona.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a drive, so
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's get started. For those of you who don't know, I am John May. I am the engagement manager, face, voice of Webgility. If you call into our support line, I'm the voice you hear. I'm everywhere. Uh, and then I'm joined by David. David is our senior implementation specialist. He's been with us for a really long time, knows the product in and out. Say hi, David.
Hello. Hi, Dave. Hi, David.
Perfect. So yeah, we between us we have a lot of knowledge on how Webgility works, both on the Webgility online and desktop side, and how it interacts with our different integrations, both on the store and accounting side. So today, really simple agenda. We're gonna go through we're gonna start with the fundamentals of oh, awesome, Susan. Yeah, David is great. I worked alongside him when I first started an implementation. He knows a lot. Really great guy. I'm happy that he got to train you. And again, if you are desktop, feel free to stay. You don't have to leave by any means. Um, the first thing that we're going to talk about though is sort of kind of addressing the fundamentals of SKUs and product identifiers, as I like to call them. Just to start with a baseline, because we're going to get into sort of using that term pretty frequently when we go into the demo. So I want to make sure everybody has the same understanding and knows why it's so important. But after we get through that first fundamental screen, we'll go through the demo with David. We'll kind of take you through all the steps of utilizing Webgility properly. when we're talking about inventory management. And then we'll end it with a Q&A. So if you have questions outside of what we've talked about today, again, totally fine. Ask any questions that you have, workflow related. We'll take a stab at anything. Just know that if we can't answer it on this session specifically, we will either follow up with you with an answer to your question or get with you to get our support or implementations team to help you out. Perfect. So just to go through the fundamentals, what are product identifiers and why are they so important? So a product identifier could mean a number of things, right? Like product identifier could be your product name. It can be a SKU, a barcode, any number of those scannable codes that you can use to manage your inventory. I'm going to use SKU here because it is usually the most surefire way, at least on our end, to ensure that something is kept unique, I guess. So product identifiers or unique identifiers, SKUs are all just a piece of making sure that things are kept consistent across your systems. I like to use Excel spreadsheets as an example of explaining what a unique identifier is because I used to work a lot in spreadsheets. And anybody in here that does accounting probably knows exactly how I feel. But stuff like VLOOKUPs and equations that allow you to compare two sets of data in spreadsheets require a unique identifier, right? And a unique identifier across any system is generally going to be something like an email address. Because everybody only has one, and if it matches, you know that it's the same person generally. This is super similar to the way that SKUs work in our systems. We know that if you have a SKU on a T-shirt or a pair of earbuds or something on your website, and you have that same SKU inside of your QuickBooks, we generally are going to know that those are the same product. That's how we know that those two products, which are essentially different, communicate to each other. The reason we don't use or we don't recommend using like a product name or anything outside of a SKU generally is because they can be duplicated or they can have really close similarities that maybe get truncated because they're too long. Any number of things that can happen. Whereas a SKU is a number generally that you can make up yourself based on any number of parameters that you have to make it easier for you to organize your products individually. And they're super important to Webgility because that's where all of our syncing comes in. That's where all of our order posting comes in. It relies specifically on knowing which product is which on either side, right? So if we pull an order from Shopify and we can see that SKU in QuickBooks, we know that we need to adjust the inventory and attribute all of that revenue or the cost of goods sold directly to that product that's in the order. All right. Do you feel like I missed anything, David? Sorry, I know I went on a bit of
Nope,
a
nope,
monologue.
nope. You didn't mention anything about the weather, but that's okay. I think we're talking about something else here.
It's hot here in Arizona. There's not much else to say. So I'll move on and we'll get to the demo portion. So David has sort of prepared a demo environment for us where he can kind of go through the motions and explain each part of the syncing process in Webgility and how it relates to SKUs and inventory management. So I'll kill my screen share here. And then if you want to share yours, David, we can get started.
All right. I think what I need to do is find out if everyone can see my screen.
I can see it.
Okay. So I'm going to do just a quick overview of Webgility, just to if you're not familiar with it and you haven't seen it. What we've got here is kind of a dashboard. We've got information and charts and diagrams here of product information. Up at the top right here, depending on what you have connected to your Webgility, you'll have the different store connections, and you have different configurations for each of those, how it brings the order into Webgility and how it's going to post into QuickBooks. So on the left-hand side, we have like your sales information and orders. We have refunds, orders, we have products. Under products, we have product catalog, and we're going to go over that a little bit today. We have inventory, price, cost. There's a few other things I want to go over quickly, like, let's see here. So down here under connection is where we connect different stores, different channels. We have an onboarding process that helps you get connected, but here's where you would connect additional stores. As you can see here, the stores lined up. We have sync settings. This is how each store that you have connected gets set up, how it's going to post to QuickBooks. And then finally, we have at the bottom, once everything's tested and posted, and we can actually post stuff to QuickBooks and then unpost from QuickBooks. So we can change settings and then post that same order again to make sure the data is going in the way you want it. But then once that's all configured, we have automation. And that automation will take whatever we've configured and automate it so that everything's running in the background without you having to push buttons. So it's kind of the overview I've got of Webgility.
Yeah, it's good
Um,
to get the lay of the land, so to speak. I know a lot of the people on this call or anybody that are watching in the future have probably already experienced WebGility and like understand fundamentally where things are at. But like I said, it's always good to get a baseline and just make sure that everybody's on the same page before we dive into, more complicated concepts or things that people don't know.
yeah, and what I set up today was earbuds, so that we're selling earbuds, I guess is what we're doing today. So this is the product catalog in Webgility. Now, you don't enter products into Webgility. You don't add them here or delete them here. What Webgility is doing is taking a list from the website of all the products and taking a list of QuickBooks, what you have for products, and it's showing them here. And what we're talking about today in this product demo is about SKUs and getting these to match. Because if we're going to help you stop overselling and we want to be able to sync data to your website to maybe it's quantity that you're syncing so that you don't oversell. And QuickBooks is where your master data is. So you receive products into QuickBooks. You're going to want to make sure that that um, product information in QuickBooks, as soon as it's changed, gets synced back up to the website. So if you add more product to QuickBooks, it shows more product on the website. As product gets sold off the website, obviously it decrements that product out of the website and out of QuickBooks.
Cool, yeah, and that's essentially the concept that we're talking about, right? When we're saying to stop overselling, it really it sounds a lot more complicated than it is, and it can be if you have a lot of different sales channels or stores. But ultimately, the gist of it is that if you have your SKUs set up properly and Webgility is set up properly to kind of handle those SKUs, that is what stops the overselling, right? Is making sure that things are tracked properly and kept, I guess, segmented away from each other in a way that makes sense for your business. Because it
Yeah,
can look in
and
a number of different ways.
yeah, and there are different ways to set Webgility up. We do, one configuration. It's not like one button is how everybody gets set up. We have a lot of different configurations. So I'm just going to go here to products and talk about the SKU setup. We can match other items like a product name. There are some issues if you're not going from SKU to SKU. SKUs are usually a shorter item in your website or in QuickBooks. It's something that you can make a number, you can make a word, you can make abbreviations, and match those from the website to QuickBooks. We can go and match product name to SKU or vice versa. We can also match product name to product name. The main issue with product name typically is people are marketing on their website. They have a really long product name with a lot of keywords in it. Um, it gets a little bit daunting to try and match that. So that's why SKU becomes more important because you can definitely go in and make that match easier sometimes than you can a long product name that's all written out in text. So that's just kind of where we would set that up here in Webgility. I would like to go to Shopify and show you a couple of things here. So I'm going to jump over to Shopify. So here I'm in the product section of Shopify, just as an example. We have products in here. One of the things with products, when you have them in any online store, and we're trying to sync data from QuickBooks to the online store, is we want to make sure that we can do that. That you have like track quantity on. So once the product is in the online store, you want to make sure that track quantity is turned on, because that's something that's going to be necessary for Webgility to be able to update and change that quantity. The other thing that happens in your online store is there's usually a sync location for the products. In this case, I've got San Francisco is where I'm keeping my products in Shopify. So when we set everything up in Webgility, we're saying we're going to be syncing to that location, San Francisco. And since we have track quantity on, we can sync that number, cost, price. We have options there. It's not just quantity, that we can sync back up to the website and keep that up to date and in line with what you have in QBO. And um, QBO, QuickBooks Online, I'm used to saying QBO, so if you're not, that's what it is. But it makes it much easier if you have multiple stores. You're doing multi-channel. You're doing uh, kind of a omni-channel setup where you're going in and managing your online stores from QuickBooks. That takes a lot of work out of the process, a lot of tedious work out of the process.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it's important to point out here. I know David's using Shopify as an example here. Shopify is always a really good platform to use as an example because it is so straightforward. But this philosophy really applies to any store. So while we're using Shopify as an example, just remember most of the things that we're going to talk about apply to any store that you're using. There are caveats and maybe limitations or specific things in every store. They all have their own way of doing things, but for the most part, the methodology and like the thought process behind things is all going to stay pretty consistent here.
Yeah, and so one of the questions I get asked all the time is, oh, I want to track, my profit and loss. And my first question to that is, where do you receive your product? So if your product setup is dependent on whether you get a full uh, P&L report for profit and loss. Like if you don't receive your product into QuickBooks, and you don't have your product set up properly for the type of product in QuickBooks, then you're not going to get that reporting that you're looking for, because Webgility isn't going to automatically add that reporting, and Webgility isn't going to have that information. So there's certain information with products um, that you have to set up. That information would be, here, I'll go in and show you on one of these earbuds here. So the product I'm talking about now is an inventory product. Um, the inventory product is going to have a sales of product income. Well, I missed the inventory asset. So inventory asset account, sales of product income account, and also a cost of goods sold account. So when you receive, you're adding the cost in there of what your cost was when you received that product. Now, without these in an inventory item, you get less data for your reporting. So here, if you have your product set up with that, you're going to be decrementing the quantities of that product. When you sell stuff on your online stores, you're going to get that P&L reporting out of QuickBooks. So it's very important to have your product set up how you're using or your requirements for reporting.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes with any of the information that WebGility can take in, right? Like anything that WebGility is able to pull from QuickBooks or from Shopify will just give you a bigger picture of how things are running in your business. So whether that be your cost of goods sold, your expense data, order data, any of that, it's important to make sure that it's all as holistic as possible.
Yeah,
Especially when we're
and
talking about being like multi-channel or omni-channel. I know there's sort of buzzwords, but the goal ultimately should be to do as little in as few places as possible, right? So
yeah, and here's also some people are drop shipping. So their inventory in um, QuickBooks, you still want your products in there so you can get all the sales information. You may have it as non-inventory if you're drop shipping. So if you're drop shipping, you're not warehousing that product. So you don't want to put it as inventory because now you're working with data that you don't really need. So if you're like not warehousing your product and you're drop shipping, then all these products could be non-inventory. Same thing with companies that are doing services. So this could be a service item if it's a service item that you're selling on the website. So you want to make sure that those are linked up and paired in the right manner so that your data is coming out complete in QuickBooks.
yeah, well said.
All right, I'm going to jump back to the product catalog. This will start making a little bit more sense because you have QuickBooks. Let me go back to my earbuds here.
Yeah, and just to while you do that, just to take a snapshot of what's going on at the top of the screen, right? For those of you that don't use this feature a lot yet, or maybe don't fully understand what all the naming conventions are, but at the very top left, you have the missing in Shopify, missing in QuickBooks, manual match, auto match, ignored, all that. Really, the way to look at it is missing in QuickBooks is it means that it exists in your Shopify, but it does not exist in QuickBooks. And the opposite for missing in Shopify. It exists in QuickBooks, but does not exist in Shopify. And necessarily it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that we can't find that unique identifier or that product SKU to match those two products and make sure that they're the same.
Yeah,
With manual matched, and I know David, you're going to get into the manual and auto matched, but yeah, just I know it's a little confusing when you see missing in QuickBooks, missing in Shopify. It's the opposite, right? So just something to keep in mind.
yeah. So here you can see under this, the QuickBooks product SKU, earbuds here, matches, earbuds here. If you have a clean match like that, it's just going to be automatic. It's going to match. So anytime you add a new product to your Shopify um, and have that product added to QuickBooks, if you do match whatever configuration you're matching, whether it's a product name or a product SKU, um, just make sure that that matches. Now, people, all the time they'll say, well, it matches, and I'll look at it, and it'll be, you know, maybe it's IPX5 space EB space and just has a B. Well, it might mean the same thing, but it's not written out for a match. So matching means the same spaces, the same dashes, the same words. That's how it matches. Now, we do have some AI built into Webgility. That AI helps with product matching. We also have an AI assistant. I'll touch on that in a second. But if we're going into, like missing in QuickBooks here, you can see this little orange cross here, and the AI has gone through and it's found these items. They don't match exactly, like earbuds wireless blue doesn't really match earbuds wireless BT dash blue, but it thinks this would be a good match. And like that top one, it is a good match. So you can go over here and say confirm match, and then now that is mapped or matched, I should say, with the product in QuickBooks. And I said mapped. We used to use the term mapped all the time, and we're pretty
We'll
much
probably
using
still
matched.
use that
Yeah,
term, you and I at least, because that's
yeah.
how it always has been.
I saw John laughing at me for that one. Um, So here, earbuds wireless red, but it's thinking, this blue one might be a good match for it. Well, it's not, but you can find the blue one, you know, and it has suggested it in the drop down here, so you can select it and match it. The other thing is on manually matched products, if you had a list here of products that you've manually matched, they will show up here. And if for some reason you accidentally matched the wrong one, you can unmatch that and go back and match it again. So we have different ways to match products. We also have a way to set up a product transfer. So on simple product SKUs that are in the website, Webgility can configure the product information. If you add a new product in the website, say you have a POS and that's where you're receiving your product and you're adding your product in the website, we can actually then post that product and make that product in QuickBooks so that you don't have to make it in two different locations at the same time and manually match them together or have them match here in our product. It'll match automatically. It'll just make it when there's an order with that new product on it. It can make that product in QuickBooks.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
Yeah, the
touch base
important
on
thing
that.
to know about that is that transfer isn't something that you'll do here, right? Like in the product catalog. That'll happen when you have an order that and you'll see in the sync settings that I'm assuming David is about to show. But when you go to
Yeah,
post an order that has a product that doesn't exist in your QuickBooks or we can't find the product identifier, it'll ask if you want to create a new product, or you can have it do it automatically, but it'll ask if you want to just create that product in QuickBooks for you.
yeah, we have a couple different settings for that. I don't want to go into that too much. It's just another feature but like if they weren't in QuickBooks, depending on your workflow and configuration, you could have it make that automatically in QuickBooks when the order comes in, or you could have it ask you, can't find this product. Do you want to make it or do you want to match it to something? So we have options there. Also, on our catalogs for the products, under inventory, we have automation for this to set this up after everything's configured, but we also have a way to do the syncing here manually. So like for inventory price or cost, we can go in here and we can go into sync. We can tell it which direction from QuickBooks to the store or from the store to QuickBooks, and then we can sync that manually. Uh, So have some manual settings here typically we use them as we're setting it up. But if you want to you just added a whole bunch of stuff to QuickBooks and you want it over there right away, you could sync it manually just to do that. The sync is every 15 minutes or overnight, depending on your account. So it will sync automatically if that's set up.
Great. Yeah, and I think
So
when you're syncing products, I think it's important to also note that you can sync it either way, right?
yeah, we can
When you
sync either way. Um, I got a new feature I'm going to mention in a few minutes here. I'll get into that. I like new features. I did talk about the AI matching on the product catalog. I do want to talk about this AI assistant briefly. We do have a feature here. If you want to do certain queries, certain questions, find out certain information about your products and stuff. Um, Here in our AI automation tool, we've got some prompts here that just kind of show you the types of things you can, use this for. So I don't want to go into that too much, but it's kind of a cool feature. And that's what you see up there with the AI assistant. So we have it built in to help with product matching. We have it also here for use if you want to go and try that out. It is a beta product right now, but it is pretty cool.
it is also only in Webgility Online at this moment, just for clarification. I know we had a couple desktop people present, so
Okay. Yep. So next, I want to go down to the automation so you can see how that works. So down here in the automation, um, the scheduler has rules, and that scheduler is the automation. So in here, we can go in and set up the automation here. You can see nightly 15 minutes on this account level that we have here. There's notifications. It tells you what happens with the automation, but what I really like to talk about here is the syncing of the product information. And it's not a two-way sync. I get this question all the time. It's not a two-way sync of the product, like the name, the description, the pictures, all that kind of stuff. What we're syncing, once the products are matched between your website and your QuickBooks, we then can sync the cost, the price, and the quantity, all of them, one of them, however you want to set it up. So here you can also define, this is that brand new feature. So the new feature is that you can now pick which direction with the automation you want to sync either from QuickBooks to the sales channel, or if you have a POS, you can sync from the sales channel to QuickBooks. If you are a person with an online POS, then you will understand they're used to receiving the quantity into their POS, which is an online store basically, or an online product. And then when you're trying to record everything in QuickBooks, you don't want to have to go and receive that in QuickBooks over again just to make that QuickBooks match. So now we can sync it both ways. So that's a really neat thing to have. When we enable sync, we have it for price, we have it for cost. The most important is usually the quantity for the inventory sync, and that's what you see here. So, but we can do um, syncing of price and syncing of cost. So there's other things in the sync here like refunds, fees, that kind of stuff that we can set up and also automate.
Perfect.
So there's one item here that I'd like to go over. It's kind of a tip. This is just from working with customers all the time. When you're working with all these different online stores, it's great if you have online stores that all have the same product. They're all coming out of the same pool in QuickBooks. So when you receive all your products into QuickBooks, your online stores, like maybe your Shopify, your BigCommerce, your Magento, your WooCommerce, those can all be coming out of your inventory in QuickBooks. Now, there's a specific case, and I don't have Amazon connected here today, but say you have an Amazon FBA. Now, Amazon, you're going to send a bulk of your product to Amazon. You still want to have that listed in QuickBooks, showing that you've received that quantity so you can have your profit and loss statements all show everything properly for those products. But what you end up needing to do is, how do I separate it? QuickBooks Online doesn't at current time have inventory locations. Normally, if you send your inventory off to Amazon, you're going to want to say, well, this is an Amazon location. I don't want to pull other inventory out of it because I've already sent it to Amazon. So what I see people do, the most common method here, see if I've got this in here. Yeah, here's one right here. So what I see people do to try and say this inventory is specific to Amazon is in QuickBooks, they'll put something in the name of the product or in the SKU of the product that says this is an FBA only product. And when they match that up to the ASINs or products in their Amazon, those products in Amazon will have a unique name for those products too. And that way, when you pull from all your other stores, you're going for all the products that don't have a FBA on them. And then when you're on your Amazon, you're pulling and matching up just the products with FBA on them. And right now, that's probably the best way I've seen people match when they need to have like different warehouse locations, even though QuickBooks Online doesn't support that.
Yeah,
So
and,
it's,
and having that additional like that FBA makes it super easy to search too. So if you're trying to do anything in Webgility, just searching FBA will pull up any that have FBA in the SKU, right? So definitely makes things a lot easier to manage.
yep. And another tip, people say, well, can I use my barcode for my SKU? And yes, you could put the barcode here, still use it with your scanner, put the barcode in the SKU field, use that. There is sometimes where I see customers have a product with a barcode on it, and it's a group of different colors or something, and maybe they are or not tracking those colors. But if it only has one barcode, you're still going to want to make sure, like if it's a product with variants, that each variant you're selling has its own unique SKU. So for instance, here's 6 variants on this product. If you go into this product and look at the product itself and the SKUs, there's pretty much like a parent product here. Um, and then down here, you have a different SKU for each of the variants that you're selling. You're selling these variants, you're not selling the parent. So if you had a barcode and you were using that barcode for your SKU, you would want to make sure that you had a unique barcode for each of the variants.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
All right, I think I've made it through my list of topics.
Perfect, perfect. If you want to hand the screen share back over to me, I just have that final Q&A screen that we can put up there. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, now is the time to ask them. Doesn't have to be necessarily related directly to SKUs, SKU management, anything like that, anything that we just talked about. If you have questions directly regarding your subscription, you're more than happy to ask them or more than welcome to ask them. But we might need to get with our teams afterwards to get somebody to help you out. Um, doesn't look like any questions yet, but one question that I've definitely seen in the past when we talk about SKUs is like what are like the common mistakes that people with SKUs make? I think you pointed out one with the barcode. People ask to use barcodes a lot for a good reason, right? Like you would think that that would be a good or like surefire way to make sure things are unique. Another one would be just not having SKUs at all. When I was in implementation, that was a big problem was that you'd get people with a brick and mortar point of sale and they have 20,000 products and maybe half of them have SKUs and there's no real order to any of the chaos in their SKUs either. It's just like in whenever they get a new product, they just create a new SKU or they use somebody else's for that product and there's no real order to it. So one thing that I would suggest is just using SKUs at the baseline. If you don't use SKUs currently and need to pivot to that, I'm actually going to send a resource out for sort of like coming up with a process for creating SKUs fresh. So if you're sort of in that boat where you have a ton of products and you don't want to have to go through and either manually match all of those products to their counterparts in QuickBooks or, come up with a whole SKU process from the ground up. This at least can help you with the framework so that when you do create new products, or if you did want to go back through and do some spring cleaning, then you can do it pretty easily there. Because there's some methods to make it a lot more intuitive, right? Like a SKU doesn't necessarily have to be just the name of your product with a description or whatever. It doesn't have to be just a numeric value that doesn't mean anything to you. A perfect system is somewhere in the middle, right? Where you have a mixture of like the product itself, the brand, the model, and then the variant, essentially. So I'll send that out after the webinar. Of course, as all of our webinars go, anybody that attended will get a link to a recording of this webinar and everything that we talked about. If you guys have any questions, the ultimate goal of this is always going to be to give you guys the ammunition to use Webgility to its highest potential and answer any questions you have about either using Webgility or even outside of that from a more broader like e-commerce management standpoint. Feel free to ask any questions you have. You can email me directly, john.may@webgility.com if you have any feedback. After this webinar ends, after I hit the end button, you guys will get a survey that it just asks you what you guys would like to talk about going forward in these. We have a number of topics lined up for the first handful, but again, being that the goal is to give you guys the ammunition that you need, it would be great if you guys could give us an idea of what you want to talk about. Since we're here to help you, I think talking about what you guys feel is important for your business is paramount for us. So, um, yeah, if nobody has any questions, I can go ahead and give you guys a couple minutes back in your day. I know we planned for 9:45, so it's about right on
I
time. But
I I do see a couple
oh,
a
I see
couple of
it.
questions in there.
Yeah. What other features does the AI assistant have? Currently, the AI assistant, that sort of chat system at the top, is more for data and understanding how your system or how your stores are performing. So within each store, asking it questions or asking it to post orders, it can do some sort of basic functionality for like posting orders and different sets of data and then asking it questions based on like the performance of your products is the other use case for now. As David pointed out before that, though, in the product sync section, another part of the AI feature is that it does that. What we call it internally is fuzzy matching. If it sees that there's a product that has a similar name on both sides, it tries to link those and give you the option to sync those without having to manually search it. Those are the only AI features currently. I know we're always looking to kind of enhance those features. If you have specific feedback or things that you'd like to see the AI tool do, feel free to let us know because being that you guys are our customers, we want to make it better for you. I use desktop, but the online seems more user friendly. I'm on a
Yeah.
hosted server. Is it possible to use the online? Oh, absolutely. The
There is
real,
a caveat here. I'm
yeah,
going to jump in.
yeah,
One of the things is that we pair kind of our Webgility Online with QBO, with QuickBooks Online. We pair our desktop, Webgility desktop, typically with QuickBooks desktop. Now, if you're already on Webgility desktop and you use QuickBooks Online, then yes, you could migrate. It's a new setup that you would have to go through, but you could migrate and use Webgility Online with your QuickBooks Online. So that's kind of how we pair it up and make it work. You do have to be careful because there's some advanced features like the warehouse locations, or maybe if you're using unit of measure or any advanced
yeah, like
inventory
bundle
controls.
items or
Yeah,
assembly items.
there's some things that QuickBooks Online doesn't have for features. So
Got it. Yeah, generally, yeah, as David said, our Webgility desktop is paired specifically for QuickBooks Desktop. I definitely agree with the user friendliness. Webgility Desktop has been our sort of our flagship for a long time. So with Webgility Online being the newer product and made to sort of mirror that QuickBooks Online experience, I think the user friendliness, you could probably attest to the user friendliness of QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Desktop as well. It's kind of a similar separation between the two. One thing I will say though is if you are using QuickBooks Desktop and you are looking to move to QuickBooks Online, because I know Intuit's trying to push people to it anyways, that's always an option as well. I know there are a lot of opinions about the difference between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop, and as David mentioned, some of the feature disparity there. But as David also mentioned, with like that multiple inventory sites sort of workaround in our inventory system, there generally are ways to accomplish the same things in QuickBooks Online, albeit with maybe a little bit more extra work on the back end. But if you're concerned with user friendliness and having something that is maybe going to be evergreen, being that Intuit's sort of pushing people to online more and more and has started sort of like sunset all of their support for their desktop stuff, sort of rolling into the future, that is something to consider maybe in the future. But um, yeah, we do allow uh, QuickBooks Online on hosted server. Since it's a cloud product, you can just access it from any browser. So you wouldn't even need to be in a hosted server at all. One additional point about hosted servers, we are sort of kicking off a new partnership here pretty soon. I don't know who you're hosted with, if it's Rightworks, I would assume, is generally who we see our hosted environments come from. But we are working on a new agreement with an additional hosting provider that we can get you in touch with as well. Oh,
yeah,
Summit. Okay, perfect. So
yeah,
that's actually who we're going to be working with.
and I'm going to answer this because if you do have QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, Webgility Online isn't the right product to interface with QuickBooks Enterprise Desktop. You would first have to migrate everything from your QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online for us to be able to pair those two together.